Testing. Okay, so this is Saturday afternoon. We've got a half an hour of um, intermediate advanced Kung Fu, but it's open, it's not pillar form. So, last class was kind of interesting. Someone had some questions about whether traditional form is applicable today. So actually, traditional form, which, you know, why a lot of people don't understand it is because you think you learn a form and then you can apply it. Actually, forms are a vehicle to practice, to develop your technique in some way or form. Most of us are fairly uncoordinated. Most of us don't have the ability to focus the power and, um, to utilize the strength from your body. So strength is developed in our training. Conditioning is part of that training, and body mechanics is part of that training. So coordination, body mechanics, and how we learn to execute is through that basic strategy of using your form. So then we have this idea of what is good form and what is bad form. Good form is coordinated movement, directed and maintained through how we control our body. So ultimately, we have to control our body in order to use our technique. So while you're trying to use your elbows, how do you use your elbows? How do you use your shoulders? How do you use your body in that way? So you have to understand through the physical feeling of that movement and also, the naturalness of where the strength and weaknesses of those positions. So take for an example, an elbow. We draw the elbow, we roll the elbow, we strike with the back fist and the palm as a combination. So those are combinations. So you work through those movements to develop a cycling through. And the cycling through teaches you to move from point A to point B, B to C, and continue to cycle through. So you don't see that when you're going 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not what's happening. You're developing the idea of what this side looks like with the footwork, what this side does. So that's your tiger and crane. And then we do these movements, some of them with open hands, and you do some of these with closed fists. And you say, so how do you apply those? One of the things you have to understand is body form. What happens beyond the wrists really happens inside here. So your arms are your bridge work. Your arms are how you grab and you pull and you move. That's all part of the structure of the body and the body positioning. The hands are really an extension of that. So if I poke you with the fingers or punch you with the hand, it's really the same action. So when back in the late 60s and 70s, they had a lot of full contact fighting, and a lot of the traditionalists would get into it. But then you do these forms, and they look like this, and they look like this, and you look like this. How are you going to use those movements in full contact fighting? You don't use it like that. Because when you put the gloves on, you no longer have fingers, and you no longer have thumbs. Now, with some of the Sanda now, they put these gloves on with the fingers. But back in the day, you would put on gloves, and you didn't have your fingers. So how do you practice that? So you use the same motion as you would use with the open hand. Just that the open hand is used to strike different targets. But when you're striking in, say, the boxing or the Sanda, you're using gloves. So you have to accommodate your movement to work within the realm of that. So if you're using an elbow or knee, those are all parts of the tools and weapons that you have as part of the apparatus. So when you put the gloves on, the striking surface is the same, whether it's a back fist, this, or you're coming down like that. That's the same, whether your hand is covered or not. But the thing is, how does your body move when you use it? So this hand moves like this, that's your block. This is sinking the elbow, this is coming up. So in order to throw a punch, you have to drop your elbow and come up. So the dropping side of the movement becomes defensive, the rising becomes offensive or defensive. So the strategy of moving is the same. So when we go like this, this, and this, you see in Fuhak we have the hook, we have the palm, we have this. But when you close the hands, you have the same basic body mechanics and moving. So that's why, it's very interesting. It really depends on your goals and what you're training for. If you're training to go in the ring, you have to have the gloves on. If you're training, like Thai boxers or all the different fighting arts, they have similar movements. When you lift your knee, but their focus is so different in their strategy in their fighting competition, but they're using the same body. So their training is very different in a sense of conditioning. So, but essentially, a round kick is a round kick. Whether you break the knee this way, those are all the same. The side kick, it's the same. The punch is the same. These are all the same. They're the same movements. You just formatted in a different mapping of the form to teach and train you to do those certain things. So stylistic difference do exist, but the thing is, where did all these things come from? Where did Kung Fu come from? Where did boxing come from? Where they were developed as a survival, because before these things become an art form or strategic, people kind of were brutal. They would get up there and then maybe grab the guy by the hair and throw him down on the ground. And then after a while, they learned how to use that and what was effective. Then they would take those movements and then try to formulate them and practice them. Boxing uses shadow boxing, and so what is shadow boxing? Shadow boxing is doing forms. When you go uppercut, when you jab, these are just practicing your movement. Now, when Sugar Ray was boxing, when he was very fast, what is the body form? How you move. I've been doing this for a long, long time, so I've actually seen the evolution of a lot of these things. I've seen this from the late 50s all the way to now, how fighting has kind of evolved, whether it's the boxing on Saturday nights or if it's judo, wrestling. All of these things kind of evolved through time, tied to martial arts and then mixed martial arts, and from karate, taekwondo on down. There was always this phase of what interested people, but the bottom line to all of it is how effective that style is in its approach. Now, Kung Fu has actually taken a back seat on a traditional level to many of the other fighting arts, not because it's not good or effective, it's because the people that practice and train don't focus on that aspect, or they don't put the same emphasis, and they don't use the same conditioning and training to strengthen their body the way it is. There's a lot of people that bring sort of a bad look to Kung Fu, traditional arts particularly, and that's really disappointing to me, because over the years I have done this, and I realize what some of the strengths and weaknesses are of the different styles. So taking the traditional art and understanding more in depth of how it works really will actually bring a deeper understanding in one way, but also bring more interest to the side that actually appeals to so many people. So to me, this is what I do. So actually, this is what I try to focus on and try to get across to the many people that are watching, whether it's South America, the Europeans, or even in Hong Kong, wherever. There is an aspect to the training that's sometimes overlooked, and then we lose sight of it. So anyways, that was that. I'm going to actually do a little bit with the stick again. And one of the things that we do when we're practicing the stick is to understand basically what I did last week was the foundation movements. So when we're in the horse stance, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So we constantly go back into those positions. So what are we training here is body form, position, and how to strike. So this is an extension of the body. So the average person who picks up the stick, like a baseball bat or whatever, they just want to swing and hit you as hard as they can. So that's the crude side of using an apparatus, like picking up a 2x4 and banging someone in the head. That's not really the goals when we practice traditional arts. Our goal is to build body form and control and understanding of what we're building with the structural integrity and efficiency of movement. Because you don't really need to learn this and learn a stick form to hit someone on the head with a baseball bat. That's a whole different mindset, and it's a whole different, world out there that people do that. But for us as martial artists, as for people that train to develop, a discipline, we have to understand that we use these as tools. That's all they are. So when we're in this horse stance and we go like this and this and this, that's really deflecting, striking. That gives you the idea there's a sense of that. So when you go from here, here, how fast can you do that? It's as fast as you can go because you develop that coordination. But when you first learn it, you have and it's not connected to the body, there's no body form, how do you expect to use it? Well, the same applies when you're throwing a punch. How do you expect to use it? Can you blame the art for your inconsistency, or you have to blame yourself for not putting enough effort in to understand what you're trying to do? So it's kind of a give and take. You can't assume that because I put that label on me that I've learned Kung Fu, that you're a proficient Kung Fu practitioner. That's actually being disingenuous to what you're learning, and also taking away from some of the end goals and results. So this, and this is one thing. Now, the transition down here, across here, down here, becomes another dimension of movement. So when I go here and I go down, or I strike across like this, that becomes a strike. But at the same time, it's a transition. So if I'm here and I move my leg, that becomes a hand-eye coordination where the hand and leg work together. When I go like this, or I go like this, or I go like this, that's a direction of movement. You strike depending on where you're going with it. It's sort of like this is like any apparatus. If you use, like in the kitchen, if you use a spatula, you do one thing. You use a spoon, you use it a different way, depending on what the purpose is. Try to scoop your soup with a spatula. You're not going to get it anywhere with it. So at the same time, you can't flip an egg with the spoon. So, there's a technique in everything that you do, and in a different way. So when we're here, when we sit like this is a cat stance, and we sit like this. What is the purpose of that? The purpose of that is something comes here, you're going to strike here. Now, when I go like this and do this, there's two things that you see. You see the stick going like this, and you see the hand going like that. But what you miss is the transition, right? If I go like this, and I intercept soft enough, I'm going to hook it and pull it this way, and then strike back. So that is like, if I'm here, and I go like this, and I go like this, that's how your hand would move as a technique, right? If I go like this, and I go like this, and I go like this, that's a technique. It's a continuity of movement that's built over time. So when your body becomes intelligent, then your response and your accuracy of your position becomes much more effective. So it's not about just throwing your punch. It's what happens in between before you throw the punch. So, that's what you will see. Two people, they encounter each other. The first thing they do is try to hit each other and knock each other out with the punch. Well, most of the time, you miss. You miss because you're not set up and prepared, to hit at the right time and place, because it's moving. So that's something that's learned over time and experience. So the same thing happens here. When we learn this, and we learn this, and we learn this, and this, we learn over time what the goal is and where the target is. So here we are in a position as part of the form, right? So when we're here, we're going to turn, right? Come here. 1, 2. So that's another position, another position, another position. So as you see, all the maneuvers are actually basically coming from here. Right? So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What makes it look different? The leg work. Right? So if you don't coordinate your leg work with what you're doing here, the movements will be less effective, less efficient, and not giving you the sort of the understanding, the insight of why something like this works. If you're doing the 8-diagram pole, or if you're moving the legs, why does these things change or make it have a different appearance? The different appearance applies the same thing as standing here and doing this. It doesn't look different until you do this. So see, hand-eye coordination, total body movement, is the most important part of our training. While we're doing this in space, you have to know the parameters of your movement. So these are ideas. If I poke the setup here and the poke there. If I go like that, it's the arm. But you want to include the legs because your power comes from the leg, and it builds everything that we're striving to connect, is that accuracy of movement, precise direction of movement, and targeting. So you have targets. When we're talking about high, middle, and low, those are areas. So when we poke to the head, it goes to the eye. When we strike to the head, it's that. So it doesn't matter where you're coming from, this side or that side or that side. It's in that space. If I poke like this to the leg, that's going to the shin, the top of the foot. When I go like this, it's hitting the leg or sweeping, right? Because when you do this, isn't that how we do a sweep in Hung Gar, in Gung Ji Kuen or Fok Fu Kuen? We have that sweep. We're like this. Then we pull like this, push like this. That's footwork. We learn that in the basic form. But yet, when we put it to work here, we have to realize that this is what's happening, right? So that's the timing. Cross movement, equal and opposite. What's that do? Balance. The strength, the energy in the movement has to be connected. When I'm here, what's the next movement? Here. Okay, so I'm here. So what is that? When you sweep and you push, becomes like when you grab someone and you're going to move, take them down. That's how you take down a person based on how the body's going to move. You can't do it by not connecting the hand and just using your leg. It doesn't work because you don't have action. You have to disrupt your opponent's balance and disrupt their strength in order for you to do that. So the person you start to move and you try to do this, the person's already set up. They got 100% of their weight on that leg. There's no way you can move it. So that's why movements or techniques become ineffective, because you didn't set up the position to apply the technique. And that's really strategy. In a battle, there has to be a strategy. And that's what you learn through your form. You learn to set it up, prep it, execute, see if there's results. No results, regroup, reset. So that's what we're doing in a form. That's strategy, in sort of the military aspect or the pugilist aspect or the fighting strategies that people have. So you really have to really prepare your body to know all the little things that you have to go through to reach that point of execution so that you have good results, right? So with the form, like we started in the beginning, when we're here and you pick it up and you swing it around, you have to step up and bring it down. We set it up and bring it down, right? So this is fundamental, right? So you can swing it around like this, but that's not what you have to stop it to here and then come back, change the directions, and you're here. Then you step up and you push, and this should be here. Pull it back, and then push. Drop it down, shift your weight, move it like this, set up your stance, and come down like this. Open like this, and poke down. Shift your weight, adjust this foot, come to horse stance. Now I'm in that corner, I poke down toward the toe, or you're actually hitting the instep here. There's lots of bones and nerves in someone's foot. That's why you would do that. And then you would strike down here, and then you just repeat this side. And you poke, and you step up, step out, sink down, and pull, and push. Drop it down, step up, bring this foot here, strike down directly to the back so that you can lift this, and then flip around and come toward the throat. Okay, so that's a sequence, and it's part of the Lao Sui stick form, and that's a sequence of events that we have to build as a sequence, and the form continues and it goes on and on. So that's why, apparatus is interesting, but it's really a support tool to kind of help you build the two sides working together, the upper and the lower going together, and understanding of the angles. So 45 degrees is this, vertical is this, horizontal is this, angular position is this, maybe 30 degrees, and then you have your 45s, and you have all of this. Now, when I speak of joint angle positions, triangles, squares, circles, and hoops, 45 degrees, that's a standard in the body form. So when we put something in the hands, and we go like this, and go like this, and go like this, and go like this, that relationship of angular position starts to form in the body, and that's how you can see it through the stick, because now everything is magnified. You can see if my hand is like this, it's 45 degrees, but yet if this is like this, or this is like this, it's going to be off. In fact, I have a little trouble getting into the wrong position because my body doesn't know, has already passed that stage of being in the wrong position because it feels uncomfortable to me. So while you're learning positions in your forms, whether it's the fist form, meaning the empty hand, not using a stick, your body over time starts to bring in all those positions into the body where you start to recognize it. This is really a tremendous aspect of weaponry, how you coordinate the hand, how you move it. When we're like this and you make a circle, it's not easy for someone that really hasn't controlled a movement like this. It's not easy to coordinate the two hands without actually practicing this type of action. So that's really what you do. You do the movement over and over again. You want to make it round, you practice round. You want to make it accurate in poking, you practice poking. So it's just one of those things. It's like shooting an arrow or shooting even a rifle or a pistol. If you don't aim at the target and do it often enough, you're not relaxing enough, you're not pulling the trigger, you're not releasing, the archery bow. All of these things come into play as, human body control. We can control our limbs to create what we wanted to do as the goal. So skill is actually body intelligence. As we build body intelligence, then we begin to understand what we're taking in here and translating it into what we're doing. So, we have to understand also that we're trying to refine movement and refine the understanding and build our body intelligence of what the potential is. Whereas someone that's only interested in destruction and fighting and so forth can do it in a very crude manner. You don't need to practice something like this to just go around and be barbaric. Barbaric type things happens before, in the past. There's still some of that today, so you still can injure people without doing it gracefully. But if you're working with this, then taking that side out of it, it becomes what we call martial arts. Martial arts is an art form because art has depth and it has interpretation. So as we interpret our movement and evolve through time, we start to appreciate what the human body is capable of doing and how magnificent we can get our body to understand these levels of thought and training. So that's why someone like myself has spent decades and decades and decades doing this. Not to become the most brutal person on earth, because I want to refine the technique so I don't need to be brutal. So that's the discipline. So if you need something like this to cultivate, yourself, this is one method of doing that. Because through this you can learn many, many things. Because what changes is not only your attitude, but the way you think and the way your mind operates. So that's one aspect of traditional Kung Fu that not everybody discovers. That's what I've discovered, but it's something that I've discovered on my own personal journey with this. So on that note, I think we're pretty close to the time. This is a valuable tool. If you're doing this, if it's about this long, that's probably ideal. You can do it with a shorter one if you don't have the space, but this is better proportionally for you. And, this is actually is tapered on the bottom. The traditional Hung Gar people use one that's more straight. This is okay. People that don't know, these are trees. In China, they have these skinny trees. They take off the branches and smooth it. These grow straight. So it's just something that's natural. So we use this as a training tool. And you can go online and you can look to see who sells these. All right, on that note, I'll see you next time. Hope that was helpful. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe.